everybody, and welcome to another episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. I'm your host, Marley Major, and if this isn't the example of the best train wreck ever, I don't know what is. You guys are going to love this. So I have a guest who is such a good sport. Her name is Beth Miller. She's from the University of Dayton in Ohio. And as you guys know, my mom was from Ohio. So to me, I kind of look at it as an extra weird serendipity. But before I tell you too much about Beth, we were connecting on LinkedIn because of a mutual friend, Marcy Pellegrino. And you guys, if you haven't listened to that podcast about Marcy's Pet Kitchen and her amazing dog treats and stuff, you need to. But Beth had reached out to me. It was basically like, can I share your podcast with Marcy? Like in my class, we'll talk about her class, etc. And I was like, yeah, sure. So I said, and I'd love to have you on my podcast. She's like, great. So I sent her the link. Well, typical Marley Major style. She's like, oh, great. Because remember, she's a professional, is getting the link. Like, we're going to now chat about permission to use the stuff in her class. Well, from my perspective, hell, I already gave her permission. Use it away, So then the poor woman, I'm like, oh, okay, this is how the podcast is going to go. And she's like, oh, wait, we're doing a podcast? So we have the most spontaneous, best, coolest person who just is like, sounds good. Let's do the podcast. So Beth, if that's not so random, without further ado, welcome to the show. And I think you should have a permanent spot just because for all of this. So
I agree. We'll be co-hosts. We'll bring in all kinds of crazy people and do all kinds of crazy antics.
I mean, if this is not an antic, you guys, really, it's going to develop as this thing goes on. But literally, we were in her mind having a meeting, and in my mind doing a podcast. But you know what? In my journal this morning, I was writing all about what I want versus what I don't want, and I was just I just want the cool, fun, magical people that I'm supposed to see just show up and
I appear.
Bless us. Beth doesn't appear. So Beth, when I say you're like a real person with a real job, I mean, you don't get to be at a university typically with your biggest credential being on, every day is a train wreck. So give us your backstory. And are you from Ohio? How did you get to be a professor? What are you focused on? Because I think our listeners are going to just love what your focus is. So
thank you.
in.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's such a crazy story because first, to answer your question, yes, I am from Ohio. Where's your mom from? Or where did she grow up?
She's from Warren.
Okay. Yeah. I'm from the Cleveland area, Broadview Heights, Brecksville. So not too far from there. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, go Buckeyes and all that. So yeah,
my son was at Ohio State for 1 year and then he transferred. I was so bummed. I'm telling you, when we moved that kid into that school, I was just like, this is why I love the Midwest, because people are so nice. Those parents were so kind and helpful, and it's just a totally different thing, I think. And
yeah, it is.
Just everybody's at a much different pace than they are in California. I feel like in California, and I spent a lot of time in New York, and it's just everything is bustle, bustle, bustle. And I'm sure I'm contributing to that because that's the vibe I give off. But boy, did I just freaking love Ohio, where I was like, oh my gosh, people hold the door and you have an actual conversation. You're like, hello, how are you today? I'm
Yes.
good. Not just
Oh, I
right
totally get that. I was in New York, was it 2 years ago, and a friend of mine and I were there visiting family and doing some fun things. And I noticed that they have this weird reaction to me because I have a tendency to look at people and smile and say
Imagine!
"Hi, good morning. How about this weather?" And they're like, "What is wrong with you?"
Are
And
you
they're like,
about to? It must be a pickpocket scheme, right? I mean, that could be
"It
the
is." They
only
kind of look at
thing,
you like, "What do you want?"
right?
And like to say hello. So yeah, it is.
That,
So then when I realized that I was having that effect on people
yeah.
with my personality, I'm like, let's double down on this. So then I was walking around the city like, hi, just
Yeah.
kind of seeing what kind of reaction I could get. And then there was
Yeah.
this little girl on the stoop, across from one of the schools, and we were just moving
Yeah.
our cars. You know how in New York, you're like, well, you can park
Yes.
there, but only till 2, and then you have to go over here for
Yes.
4 hours, and then you can move back. So
Yes.
we're shifting things around, and we see this little girl on the stoop, and she's sobbing. and she's holding this cup and she looks like she's just in all kinds of angst. So, we're both like in the grandma era, right? So we're over there like, "Are you okay?" And and she's like, "Why are you talking to me?" And
Yeah,
like, well,
exactly.
she had gotten sick. So she was holding a cup. It was full of barf. So she had gotten sick, caught it, and then we're like, "Oh," and my friend Penny's like, "Here's a breath mint," So we're doing the whole thing. And
Oh,
she's supposed to like audition or try out for basketball that day, and she was very upset about it. And her grandma was in town to watch, and so it was so weird to me that like a kid who's, I think she was 11, is like on her own in New York City, right?
right?
I mean, we were on like 77th, I think, so it was in a, fairly bougie area. But
But
still, I like,
still,
would I let my
she's
kid be like,
11.
yeah. So we're like, oh my gosh. So we let her use our phones to like call her grandma, and she's a few blocks down. So we're like, we'll walk her to you. So such an Ohio thing to do. Like, we'll adopt
Right?
you for 20 minutes while we walk you there. So we're
Right.
walking along, and the girl goes, "Where did you say you're from?" And we're like, "Ohio." And she goes, "Oh." And we're like, "What does that mean?" She goes, "Well, we just like people kind of like make fun of people from Ohio here." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I get that." Like, yeah.
Well, I
Because it is
mean,
such a different vibe. It is slower. It's very beige, like to some extent, right? Like, there's not a lot of like crazy out there stuff,
yeah.
which is kind of nice if you are a person who's a little unusual. Like, I
Yep.
wear a tie with it like wrapped twice around, so that's not
Which
typically
is
what you'd see.
which is so
But
cute. I know as soon as I saw you, I was like, "Ooh, she has great
I
style."
know, right?
Like,
You're like, oh
love,
yeah,
love, love,
Beth, right?
love. I was like,
But it is a
"Available."
place
Okay.
where if you do want to be a little unusual,
Yeah.
you do stand out just with a little bit of unusual. So it is kind of a nice playground for that. So
Well,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's kind of ironic too that the little girl was like, "Oh, making fun of that," especially when you are the two that were like saving her basically from barfing and not missing her basketball thing. And then, oh, by the way, let's talk about the mental health crises and all this other stuff going on right now where people don't have a connection. The suicide rates are like just going through, and but yet people are super
Yes.
connected on social media, but nobody's having any
Mhm.
real conversations. And so maybe if we
Yeah.
just slow down for 5 seconds and actually look somebody in the eye and made eye contact, but nobody can
Yes.
look anybody in the eye because they're so busy looking at their screens. Yeah.
Yes, they
So,
are. It's hard to pull them out from that. I was really surprised with being at the university. I kind of thought, like, I've been doing Tai Chi for about 8 years.
yeah,
And so I use breathing and visualization and all kinds of things like that. I've done that for a long time, but especially with having that kind of training. And
right.
so I thought, well, I'll bring this into the classroom because I knew you like eventually want me to say what I actually do. So
Oh, no, not
in one of the
necessarily.
classes that
That's
I
why I
teach,
say it's called every day's a train wreck, because even
oh,
if we
well,
had
this
this
will be perfect.
completely planned out, by the way, it would have segued here anyway, because that's what happens. Okay, so keep
That's
going.
good
We'll
to
get to
know.
what Beth does. In the meantime, if you guys are bored, just Google her, Beth Miller, University of Dayton. But this is where you need to be
Yeah,
and
in
listen. Okay.
Wagtown.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so when I was talking with them, the class is about mindset. It's a new course to University of Dayton because they were hearing from, businesses and campuses and things about that sort of there's a lack of students having the confidence to be like, tell me what you want me to do, show me the vision for the company, and then let me loose, right? They don't really
yeah,
have that vibe. And I don't know
right,
if that's just like something that you grow into or if that's like a Gen X thing that I'm used to or whatever, but it is a very like the students here are very nice, very Ohio, very like they're
yeah,
not all from Ohio, but they're just
sure,
the sweetest people. They're very caring and it has that kind of community vibe here anyway.
right,
So they have a softness to them, right, that I think
right.
I sometimes frighten them. So, but I'm in there and I'm like, "You know what we should do is, like, if you're gonna be getting up here to do your presentation, let's talk about what belly breathing is. Let's do some box breathing." And I thought they were gonna be like, "Lady, you're bonkers," right?
Yeah,
But they weren't. They were so into it, and, like, when I got their reflection papers from the fall semester, about 30% of them were like, "I use the breathing techniques on a regular basis, and this, like, changed my life when I decided to look at things this way." And they're just so much more approachable about those kind of concepts that I think people that are more in my age bracket are sort of like, "Whatever, lady," right? That's for the bonkers people, and it's like if you can tap into that "what am I capable of" vibe
right.
at that age, I mean, imagine what they can do then, right? So it's kind of exciting.
Well, imagine what we can all do, and what's so ironic is, like, when you say box breathing and all those things, which are things that I do, And
Mhm.
I think all this neurodivergence and that the stuff that's becoming more mainstream, which is just, like a
Mhm.
fancy way of saying I have ADHD or I have, I think differently but I mean, I don't know. I kind of think a lot of people think differently, but the the irony of what you're talking about is that the being able to sort of reset your own nervous system, I think, should be like one of the most basic things that we can all do, right? Because we know
Yes.
that, people, whatever the studies say, that people fear public speaking more than they fear death. And people fear, but all those things could absolutely help with breathing and being able to visualize and being able to regulate your nervous system. And I've had to probably, or maybe like you learn that stuff the hard way, and it's like you get yourself in a bad spot, and then you're just like, searching the internet or searching, techniques to be like, I don't want to keep feeling this way, or I can't keep up with this level of anxiety. And it's just ironic that there is this level of anxiety and there is this level of people feeling lonely and unhappy, yet breathing and doing basic things like this is like, too woo woo. But how did you come upon like Tai Chi? Because that's kind of random. I mean,
I don't know. I've always been sort of like into nature and being outdoors and things like that.
hmm
And so I've always found that to be very restorative. And then I worked for about 6 years for a conservation agency in parks
mm,
and recreation space. And in that there was a lot of celebration of what it means to be outdoors and to really connect with nature and how you
yeah.
can become more grounded and more centered and perform better. And it really resonated with me. And my son was taking a style of karate that's Okinawan Shorin-ryu, which is a defensive style that was
hmm
perfect for him and his vibe. And I was like, oh, I kind of want to try this. So, but I didn't
hmm
want to like be on his turf and like squish
Yeah.
him in there. Right? So
Yeah.
I talked with the sensei separately. I'm like, hey, I'd like to take this class, but I don't want to have it be like, oh, mom's here now, right?
Yeah.
But, they figured out a way to have it be separate, and I really liked it, and so I have a brown belt at this point, and I really liked it, but I always kind of thought it would be cool to have sort of like the cool down version, right? You do your
hmm
cardio and then you have a cool down.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Good way
That
to
it
put it.
kind of felt like that to me, right? Like I need the yawn of like hardcore like punching and kicking and right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
then
Yes.
the other side of me is that softer like, woo-woo side of things.
hmm
And I found that I would like try it out when I found it like at the Y near me or at a local dojo or whatever. And I liked the practice, but not necessarily the environment. There was one that when it
Mm.
was in a dojo, there was like 8,000 kids over here, like doing their like, "Gah," and you're
Oh,
trying to be
wow.
like,
Yeah.
mellow. And then there's like
Yes.
a
Yeah.
ring over here where they're doing some little, MMA stuff. And you're like, I just can't get into the whatever and into that
Yeah.
state of soon.
Yeah.
So then I found right down the hill from me, there was a little nature center that's teeny tiny, and they were teaching Tai Chi in there. And the woman who teaches it, her name is Judy Wilson. She is amazing. I think partially because she's a mental health counselor. So
Mm.
she understands like how to approach people about different ideas and how to get them to accept things as part of their wellness approach to life kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she's just so likable and you never feel weird like because I think like I used to teach Zumba 3 days a week for fun, and
hmm
I would have like 150 people in my class, and I very quickly figured out in the beginning you're like self-conscious that you're like, "Okay, am I doing this? Do I look like an idiot? Blah blah blah." But
Right.
with Zumba, at least the way I taught it, I would put the music as loud as I could get it, and I didn't have any cues. I would just do it and they would just follow me, which is kind of like the
Oh,
classic
that's
Zumba style.
very cool. Yeah.
And it was so much fun. And then you're like, well, they can't really look at me because they've got to pay attention to that lady who's leading the class, right? So I thought the same thing with Tai Chi. You feel like an idiot because you're like, you're doing this stuff and you're like, why is this person moving so slowly? It's like, hello.
Yeah.
But then when you start to get lost in it, and
hmm
about a year and a half into my practice with that, I came up to Judy after class and I'm like, I'm having this experience where I feel like I don't do Tai Chi anymore. I feel Tai Chi. And she was
Mm-hmm.
like, yep, that's like next level, like keep going kind of thing. And then I realized about 6 months ago that I was on my 8th year. And it's like, you can
Whoa.
definitely tell that it's like, you can just get right into it and things make sense. And now I'm to the point where I do Tai Chi and Qigong, which is Tai Chi-ish, but it's more on like energy movement and wellness and
hmm
stuff like that. that you can kind of go through your life that everything you do is a movement if you think of it that way, right? So instead of just
Mhm.
saying like grab this thing and go walk this way, it's like I'm moving my energy here, I'm picking this up and bringing this with
Mm.
me, and then I'm turning, so it becomes this sort of your life becomes less jagged
Yeah.
because you're like in the flow, if that makes
Yes.
any sense.
Not only does it make sense, it's hilarious that I'm in California talking to a woman from Ohio wearing a double tie, and that's how I'm learning how to, like, be in I mean, it should be the other way around, you would think, but it's like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So,
There you go.
yeah, I
Yeah,
love
you
that,
can
and
call me sensei from now on, all
I will
right?
call you sensei. Quite frankly, I'll call you anything you want after now that I know what you thought you were getting on this call for and that camera ready and ready to do an interview. I love that, and to me that's when you've mastered something, right? Like when whether it's a language or it's teaching a class on a subject or giving a talk or something where you go from okay, now don't forget to do part 2. Don't forget to do and then to the point where you get up and then you sit down and you realize, "Oh wow, like, I didn't have my cards. I didn't look at I didn't and you then you're like, it's just kind of ingrained in
Yeah,
you, right?
yeah.
And, yeah, I love that. And so you didn't have any, like, some big trauma that you were like, "Oh, I need to just" like, it wasn't some, like, state of emergency. I feel like the times I make the biggest changes are when it's some
Yeah.
kind of state of emergency.
Well, I did have trauma starting at the age of 6, some stuff that was very bad came into my life, and I was very interested to find that we would all do our Tai Chi movements, like the sequence of movement stuff, and then Judy's class always has, I don't know, 12 to 15 minutes at the end of class where it's just meditation.
Mm,
And I noticed that people would like put their jacket on and, put their hair back down and put on like a blanket over them because we would be sitting still and
yeah,
sometimes people would get chilled. But I
yeah.
found that I would be like, am I allowed to swear on your show?
Yes! I mean,
Okay.
it's look
Okay.
at the title,
So I
Lord
was
have
like sweating my ass off and I'm like, why
yeah,
am I like sweating like crazy when we're
yeah,
doing this meditation? So I asked her one time and she's like, well, if you're coming from a place of trauma,
yeah.
meditation, you're going to like sweat it out of you, just like
Oh,
anything else bad, right? So she said,
yeah,
as you're breathing through, the deeper you're getting into it, the more elegant you get with being able to practice that, it's going to start to come up. And so
yeah,
it was several years after that. So I started with like the perspiration part of things
mhm.
and that kind of stuff. And then we were doing this thing where we were like gathering energy and we'd always put it like in the lower dantian. And then this one class, she told us to put it somewhere else, and I had my first, like, massive flashback. Like, I was there, I could hear it, I could feel it, I could smell it.
Really?
It was insane, yeah. And I was, like, sobbing, and it was horrible, but it was like I had had all these weird headaches for years before that nobody could figure out what was going on,
Oh,
and it was that
interesting.
they were flashbacks, like, knocking at my brain, like, "Hello, we're coming." And I
And
was like,
and
"Nope,
you
nope,
have to
nope,
get
nope,
them
nope."
out.
And
I
they
mean
were staying in because I had developed the ability to be like, "Nope, stuff this over here, put this over here."
yeah,
And then when it came out, like, it was like, yeah, I couldn't stop it. It was, like, completely out of my hands and very, like, out of body experience kind of level. But,
yeah,
yeah, it just kind of and then I was a little afraid to practice Tai Chi because it was like, you let that genie out of the bottle and it's like,
yeah.
"Now what?" So,
And
yeah,
you're like,
I was a little intimidated.
is this gonna happen every time? Like, am I gonna have to clear my calendar to do Tai Chi because I'm gonna be hysterical? Yeah.
Yeah,
It's, well, to me, it's one of those things where it's like when if you have food poisoning, right, you can take something like anti-nausea or whatever, and it can mellow it out. But at the end of the day, if you've had like bad
yeah.
chicken or you have salmonella or something, you just have to barf it out. I mean, it's and this other
Yes.
stuff, I think we're gonna learn more and more and more about how, through the years about how our body reacts. And we know our body like stores things. And just like you're saying, like you were right back in that
Yeah.
scenario. And I hopefully in the future it'll be easier to tap it out or get rid of it, or won't be as you won't have to go through headaches for years and years and years. It'll just be like somebody will be wise enough to say, "Oh, start with this," or "Oh,
No, I'll
start
tell you
with
what,
that."
I mean, these were so bad that I would be like, I didn't know where I was. I couldn't
Oh, wow.
communicate. I would end up in the ER and they're like, "What do you want?" And I'm like, "Nothing." But since that moment where I had that flashback and started that process, And I've been working with a woman who's an EMDR therapist. So that's this
Mm.
eye movement sort of, you like
Yeah.
reprogram the way your brain processes information.
Yeah.
And ever since that first flashback, I have not had another one of those headaches at all. And that's been years now. So
Wow.
it was definitely the tipping point where like I was getting
Yeah.
injections in my scalp and on my shoulders trying to figure out
No
what to do with
way.
this, all these medications. I had this like it was like an EpiPen, but it was for headaches
Right.
and nothing would change it. But people would like try to restrain me because I would for some reason it would like focus right here and I would scratch at my temple until it bled and I didn't even know I was doing it, and I would, like it was awful because I always kind of felt like when I would travel for research for Wagtown, it was like, I'm in a strange city, I don't know
Yeah.
anybody, if this happens to me here so it was always sort of this thing
Yeah.
that's hanging over you.
Yeah.
So now there's a lot of freedom in knowing that it still took me a couple of years to get it out of my head that it could sneak up on me. Because it
Right.
would be weird places, like, I was at
It
Target one
always
time, and I had to
is.
go in the bathroom and, like, hide in the stall. I was golfing one day, and I'm, like, laying on the ground in the middle of the fairway. It's, like, super embarrassing and, humiliating moment, but it was definitely, to your point, the
Yeah.
energy of who you are and what
Yeah.
makes you you is knocking at your, you know, back of your brain from the inside being like, "I need to come out."
Well, I don't know if you've
So
ever done this, but I have a lot of chickens and I love chickens. And we
yeah?
hatch them, like sometimes the mamas, of course, sit on the eggs and we have new chickens. But I also love every once in a while to put them in the incubator and it's literally like clockwork, and at 21 days, I think is what it is, they start tapping and poking, at the shells and they start
Oh,
working
yeah.
really hard and you cannot help them out. They have to, it's like a butterfly, coming out of its other stage.
Oh, cool.
They have to knock themselves and they keep tapping and tapping and you see the egg wiggling and you just want to like put them out of their misery, but that's part of them building up their strength to get out. But what's interesting is they will get out. It's like once that, like to me, it's just a great kind of mental health thing. It's a great analogy for business, maybe, which is something that you could, because if you watch, and I have just sat there literally for hours as these chicks are coming. It's like I can't even take my eyes; they're like glued to it because
Yeah.
they will just fight so hard. And then the other thing is the other eggs in the incubator. It's like a chain reaction too, probably like its own
Really?
kind of butterfly effect. Yeah. So when they start hearing one start moving, it kind of can affect the other ones and then they
Oh,
start
really?
going and that yeah, it's just fascinating. And as I say, they just keep as hard as it might be, they just keep pecking and pecking and pecking until they get out and then they get out and it's like this big they're like these little wet um, gooey situations until the incubator dries them out. But you can
Okay.
just tell that it takes everything to get them out. And then they're just like, oh, I've had it. And then they kind of wake up and start looking really cute. And then their friends show up from the other eggs and it's just all, and then everybody's cheeping and it's magic.
Oh
But
my gosh. That
there's
sounds
only
like a
one
pretty good
way,
life.
right?
Like you
You
struggle
just,
to get out and then you're like, and my friends are here now.
right,
We're gonna
exactly. We're
peck
all just,
things and
exactly. And then boy, when they start eating, they are like, yeah, it goes to town. So anyway, maybe that's a good experiment you could do in your class, and they'd be like, "What in
I
the
would have them
world
do
are
some
we
kind of
doing?"
like, sometimes I think about those funny episodes we see from like Barry or something where like Henry Winkler is having these students do some weird stuff like be an amoeba, right? A couple days ago, I was trying to push my students to do like a little bit come out of their shell, no pun intended,
Yeah.
on their intro, like their hook for their pitch for
Oh,
their idea
cool.
for their business. And I knew that they were going to be quiet because this particular section has just been quiet this whole semester. And so I thought, well, we're going to get, so I had them like, I'm like, shake your hands like this, put it above your head, go behind your back, shake your feet. And I had them jump up and down a little bit. And it was amazing how the energy of the room just went like right
Yep.
here, right? And we had so much fun. And I had a couple of students that came up that were willing to like, go for it. And they just let me be my weirdness and they matched it and just kept going. And the students were cheering and clapping. And it was just a lot of fun to see that. And it's like the power of movement and breath to change
Absolutely.
the vibe of a room is just undeniable in that moment.
It goes the other way, right? Like, if all of a sudden you see somebody who takes a phone call and their face just drops and goes white, everybody's like, "Oh," like it's quiet and something is bad. So it's so nice to
Yes.
just do it and just shake it up and make it good, and then
Yeah.
everything seems like there's so many more possibilities, right? Which you need in business to have
Yes.
ideas. I think to be an entrepreneur, you've just got to have such mental fortitude to just keep being like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, because you get knocked down so many times. It's like whack-a-mole 25 times a day. Like you try to
Yes.
get a customer. No. You try, oh, you almost get it signed. No. You almost get the deposit. No. The day is wrong. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's just like bam, bam,
Oh,
bam.
so accurate on that. And you're like, I'm just a chick and I just came out of my
Right.
freaking shell. Leave me alone, right?
Right. Like I can't do this yet. And then it's sort of like the world is like, okay, can you or can't you? And
Yeah.
but then once you get through those barriers of a
Hmm.
few rounds of whack-a-mole, and then you're like, forget this. Like, I am not just going to sit down. Like, I can do this. And I think it really clarifies your why, really clarifies,
Ooh,
like Simon
yeah.
Sinek says, what do you want to do this for? Like, it has to be something bigger than I'm just going to try to 10x my company. It has to be something like,
Yeah.
I'm so passionate about it, and I'm not gonna let it go. Like, there was some quote and I'm going to butcher it, but it was something along the lines of, "Don't ever give up on something you can't go a day without thinking about." And I thought,
Ooh,
isn't that a good one, right? Because
yeah.
you in those days where you're thinking, "This idea is never gonna work. This is," one day you think it's gonna work, the next day you think you're an idiot, then you're a genius, then you're a genius, and you're a genius, then you're the biggest loser. Like, it just goes, you waffle back and forth. But I really like that quote because it doesn't evaluate, it doesn't judge, like, if don't it doesn't say you don't, like, don't ever give up on something that you don't go a day without thinking good thoughts about. It just
Hmm.
talks about without thinking about. Good, bad, it doesn't matter, it's just on your
Okay.
mind, and I
Okay.
think that you get it? Like, I think that's really special because I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, we are always working out problems, right? We're always like, "How do I make this more efficient?" Or, "How do I respond to that customer better?" Or, "How do I
Yes.
respond to them faster?" Or, "How do I tighten up my intake form?" Whatever it would be, and I think it just is it's not good or bad thinking about it, it's just you just can't get it off your mind, and
Yes.
I think it's
Yes.
kinda it's kinda
Yeah.
cool. So tell us a little bit, how long have you been at the University of Dayton?
Well, tomorrow is the last day of this semester before finals for my first year teaching like ever. Like
Oh,
I've
it's
teach at
only
conferences
your
and things.
first year?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, because I I've just had this like crazy career of like I started off with in like the ad agency business. I went to Bowling Green State University to be an
Wow.
accountant to go to law school. And then I
What?
took a class from Dr. Martha Rogers and who's just this amazing force to be reckoned with person that like came out of Y&R kind of thinking in New York. So she's like
Yeah.
got this young and Rubicam Saatchi vibe to her.
Yep.
So she's in there and there was something about her that like flipped a switch on me that I was like, that is what I want to be. Is like
Mm.
she was formidable but funny and
Mhm.
intelligent. And she made us like want to kill each other to win in that class. And
Mm,
that really
nice.
resonated with me too, with the whole competitive vibe. So I got into that and then I just thought ad agency, right? And then everything the fun and all the lore about how fun and cool it is to be at an ad agency and it like gets under your skin, you just can't get away from it. It's freaking true. Like
Uh-huh.
I absolutely loved it because for a person that does have like that popcorn brain where it's like
Mhm.
everything's kind of like always going off,
Mhm.
or if you're like ADHD in general, it would be
Yeah.
such a great career for someone because oh, it's like this week we're going to talk about mattresses, and then in an hour
Exactly.
we're going to be talking about financial services, and then we're going to be in the pet industry for a couple of
Mhm.
days, and then we're going to talk, and so it allows you to be like bing, 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 bing everywhere,
Yep.
and it's very good at showing you that the core principles of what works and like the
Mhm.
mindset, the approach, the strategy, the way you see things, how competitive you are, if you have a war board where you're really paying attention to what's around you,
Yep.
all of those things are applicable no matter what the niche is, right? So
Totally.
it's like what we did for mattresses is not the same as what we did for financial services. So you're in the meeting and they're like, well, it's between you and this other company and they specialize in whatever. And, do you have a lot of experience in mattresses or whatever? And you're like, it's not about the mattresses, right? It's like
Yep.
brand, right? It's like it's not about the font,
Totally.
it's not about the color, it's about
Totally.
what you do with it, what it represents.
Yep.
And then when they started to see that, they're like, "Oh, this is deeper than even our product or our services or our operations."
Totally.
It's like, yeah. Back to your point about the why. Like, why are you doing in the first
Mhm.
place? Tell me that.
that really has to be uncovered. And a lot of times, depending on where people are in the C-suite or the decision makers, it's like they kind of want to gloss over that. And you're like, no, because until you can get to that like level of, even if the company had been purchased, but like
Hmm.
what was in the entrepreneur's brain? Like Marcy, for example, talking about her pet snacks, like it really bothered her, right? When
Hmm.
like her dog had died and then she's looking at all these ingredients and she became obsessed, etc. You
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about how many hours she's probably spent in research. She
Oh my
wouldn't
gosh, right? It's
You
like,
might make like a penny an hour. So it's so much, you
yeah.
have to have that drive. And then when you hear her talk, like she and I were talking last night, and we were talking about,
Yeah.
podcasts and some other social media things that we were going to do. And and it was so fascinating because she's like, well, I need to do these long form videos. And I don't think I'm talking out of turn, but she's like, I need to do these long form videos. And she's like, how am I going to talk about the same subject, like by myself for 10 or 15 minutes, whatever the amount was.
And you're like,
And I,
Marcy, have you met
and I
you?
was like, A, have you met yourself? Yeah. B,
That's-
but then I just started saying, well, like, for example, you could do one on, it was like on green. She's like, oh my gosh, yes. And then I swear to you, I don't think she came up for air for another 10 minutes. And she's like, but
That's
do you
so
see what I
her.
mean? There's like just not I mean, how could you talk? And I was like, Marcy, we didn't even cover one label of a package,
Yeah.
and that was already 10 minutes. Like, and like we even scratched the surface. So you have to have that passion. And I think, and that passion has to be, as you're saying, connected in the messaging and the branding. It's really, really important. Otherwise, I think you're just
Yes.
missing such a key piece of sales and marketing because you've got all these customers who are looking to connect with someone or some brand. They just
Yeah.
haven't yet, right? And then they find that, like the Marcies of the world, who are just so passionate, and then they get on that train with
Yeah.
you, and then that's how you build, these lifetime customers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. She has a certain energy about her that, I mean, we met at Global Pet Expo last time I was speaking and she was there with her stuff.
mhm.
And I don't know, there was something about I can't even remember how we actually initially saw each other, but we ended up like doing a lap and then my friends with like Chrissy Joy and Amber Acorn and they have these like amazing dogs and they're so much fun to be around and I was like, I'm gonna go say hi to them. Do you want to come with me? And of course she's got her treat bags with her because she's
Oh
always
yes,
working, right? So she's like, oh
always.
yeah. And I'm like, yeah, ask them if they'd hold the bag or whatever. So they instantly clicked because they can sense that about her, that she's like
Of
she's
course.
got a purpose, she's passionate about it,
Yeah.
she's consistently about the high quality kind of thing without
Yep.
it being like blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So it was just so much fun. And then the next day we're like, let's meet for at like Denny's or whatever and get something before we catch our flights and things. And then we just kind of stayed in touch because we just kind of connected, right? And then I saw
Yeah.
your podcast with her and I was thinking about that because the class is obviously like business model canvas, blah, blah, blah. But it's also
Sure.
like you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to believe
Oh,
in something so much that all your friends are like, you're a freaking nutcase, right? But that's
yes.
the vibe that people sometimes have. But the ability to kind of like, okay, take it down a notch, like dial it back. Let's focus on these things, that vibe, but then you guys talked about, like, the sludge of, like, packing your own boxes,
Yeah.
doing the shipping and receiving, and then
Yep.
15 seconds later, you're doing design, and then 10 minutes later, you're writing copy, and then you're doing sales calls, and it's like, you have to enjoy that sort of fervor of chasing after something that you believe in, and then hoping that, like,
Yep.
your health doesn't block you, or
Right.
finances don't block you, or just crazy things like weather or a pandemic or whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
you've gotta be ready to just fly. So when I saw you guys
Yeah.
talking, that's why I was like, "I have to reach out and see if it would be okay," 'cause I would never wanna, like, take it and say, "I'm gonna broadcast it for the purposes of the university, but not ask you first." That's why I
Sure.
reached
Yeah.
out to
No,
you, like, 'cause I think it would
I
be so much
appreciate
fun to
that.
for them to see it. And
Well,
actually,
go
yeah,
on.
I'll put this out there because
Again, yeah.
have it up on the big screen in the classroom, and they're all watching, and
Yeah.
like, "This is so cool." And then I'm gonna tell them in advance, like, "You have to come up with questions for these people."
Oh, yeah, good.
And then, everybody comes in with a question, but then I flip the screen and it's you and
Yeah.
Marcy live, and you'd
I
be
think
like,
it should be
"We're actually
Marcy and
here."
me live in
Yes.
Ohio. Like, I wanna just
Yes.
go to Ohio and just, like, walk in the
Oh,
door, like,
okay,
be
let's
like,
do that.
"Knock,
We can go to
knock,
Tai Chi
knock."
class together.
100%. No, I mean, no joke. I love stuff like that because to me, that's where, listen, that's the spontaneity and magic of entrepreneurship, where somebody
Yeah.
says it's this kismet, these magical little things where you commented on the podcast. I think I commented back or something, checked out your stuff, was
Yes.
like, oh, that's really amazing. And you've got the AI company, you've got so many things in your LinkedIn that attracted me. And
Mhm.
then we kind of were chatting, and then you're like, can I use this? And sure. But to me, then it's like, let's just go one step further where they have to have questions, and I'll be like, okay. Like, I don't know if Marcy can do it, but I'll be like, okay, here I am. Like, what do you got? Because so much, like, I went to Georgetown and guest lecture for Georgetown, and it's, I keep focusing on with these guys that you have to emphasize the failure component, how much the failure component factors into entrepreneurship, because really the majority of the time you are failing in some area. If your
Absolutely.
product is taking off, you're probably failing somewhere in your family or with your kids or whatever. If
Yes.
right? I mean, or your marriage or I mean, all of which I
You're like,
can,
can't I have it all?
not only can you not have it all, you can barely not even have it like above the waterline a lot of times. And it's just, it's
Yeah.
like, you like, we get on a big project, and then we're on a big project and we're so into that, which is where we need to be focused. But then you're not following up on the new leads coming in, realizing you still have to maintain that pipeline. And that's the
Yes.
messy middle of entrepreneurship. It's that, yes, it's about improving your product. Yes, it's about improving your delivery method and your efficiency and all this stuff using AI. That's great. But it really, going back to what we talked about in the very, very beginning, it
Yeah.
really is about breathing, and it really is about just getting better with yourself, so that yourself,
So
you
true.
can snap back out of it. Because in the beginning, my God, I'd lose a big client or something, and I was like, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you feel like you want to be in bed for days. I mean, after you've had a few companies and after you've had a few, you're just like, girl, next. I
Yeah.
mean,
Off button, right?
it's like speed dating. You just are like, thank you, okay, whatever, don't care, don't
Yeah.
care why it didn't work, but you dust yourself off and then bye bye. And I just think that you've got to emphasize that. And so I appreciate that you picked that up on the podcast, because at the end of the day, do I love doing my podcast? Absolutely. I mean, I love who I interview, all that other stuff, but you I do it because that somewhere the right podcast is going to land with the right person who really needs it. And maybe this one is going to be with an entrepreneur who is sitting there going, who just is going to, maybe a friend recommends it, which I always say, recommend the podcast to a friend who needs it in whatever subject we're
Yes.
talking about. And maybe somebody's going to send it to, like, I know yesterday you were going to give up, and maybe this is what you need to listen to, because it really is the just clawing yourself up the mountain sometimes one more millimeter than you think you
Yes.
can. And going
Yes.
back and saying, can I go a day without thinking about this? And if the answer is no, then you've got to figure it out. So what do you
Yeah.
think with this? So since tomorrow's your kind of wraps your first year, what do you
Yeah.
think what do you think resonated the most with your students? What surprised you that resonated the most, that, like, and you want to double down on more next year?
That's difficult because it's such a weird environment to go from. My typical when I'm teaching people is like, you have 1 hour and 15 minutes in a block at a
Mhm.
conference, and these are the
Yeah.
learning objectives, these are the
Yeah.
outcomes, this is the format, blah, blah, blah. It's such a tight set, right? Like you're in, you're out, and people are like, thanks, da, da, and you go and you go like next, and then you go to the next conference, right? Or you're doing it privately with a company. It's still this
Yeah.
small thing. But 16 weeks straight of, keep your eye on the ball. I think it's a lot the same for the instructors as it was the students. It's like,
Yeah.
to your point, you know, do you have all the balls in the air right now? Are you crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's? Da da da. And it's very difficult for me to connect with them as much as I want to, as I have
Yeah.
that face blindness where you don't recognize people.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, it comes in handy when I'm grading their papers because I look at it and I'm like, and here's another paper that I have no idea who this is,
Yeah,
right?
no
It's like
clue.
I've
Yeah.
been seeing them
Mhm.
in my class for 12 weeks and I
Yeah.
cannot remember their names. And so they've been very gracious about it. They're like, don't worry about it. But it like gets me in here. Like I'm like, oh, but if
Yeah.
I feel like when I don't know their name right away, I feel like I've failed them or like I'm not giving them enough of
Sure.
me
Yeah.
because I'm judging constantly myself of like,
Yeah.
if you were really good at this, you would know their names and you would have them at the top of your head. but
Right.
it's like, lean into your strengths, Beth. And so it was a lot of learning about tenacity on my part. And,
Mm-hmm.
I have this pain condition that, like, there are some days when it's just like I can barely move. If I breathe, the motion of just my body moving from breathing is painful. And so it's like you just got to get up because these are young people who are
Yep.
passionate and driven and they want to be successful, but they're also freaking terrified and
Yes.
homesick and going through
Yep.
a lot. And there's so much expected of them
Yep.
on a different level and in a different way because everything is so public, right? Like when we were growing up, it's like we did all kinds of stupid shit and it never went
Yeah.
anywhere because it was
Yeah.
never recorded, right?
Exactly.
Everything they do is out there, right? And so I think it leaves them pretty vulnerable and raw and careful. And so
Yes.
that's why, like, here's this thing in my right next to me, this fail forward lab, right? Like we do these
Oh, yeah.
things where it's like, and so I force them to, like with AI, it was really interesting to me to see when they come in the fall, they have a different vibe than in the spring because they haven't been using it. And a lot of times I think the parents and grandparents are like, don't use AI because that'll be cheating, right? And
Mhm.
it's like, I don't know about that because if they leave their college experience and don't have agility with those tools, which
You
I think
have to.
democratizes their ability to do social good and things, isn't that like sort of almost educational malpractice? Like I sent my kid to you, they need to
Yeah.
come out employable, agile, confident,
Yes.
ready to roll. And it's like,
And most importantly, at the very least, exposed to it, to the pros
yes,
and cons and how
yes,
other people are gonna use it and whether they decide to go into a field that's gonna use a it's hard to imagine a field that, eventually isn't gonna
I
have
know,
AI,
I
but,
know.
I mean, to me, at the very basics with AI is you look like I just and I was did a whole talk on the future of AI in Vietnam, and so I like love the subject, and I get the scary parts, etc. But I do think that at the most basic level, if you can just use AI to just cut down a human being's time, like just synthesizing data or looking for patterns,
Hmm.
that's just almost a universal win. I'm not saying you
Yes,
get the patterns and then you go, "Oh, great, my work is done," and you don't validate them or you don't look further, but if
right.
you can, it's kind of the equivalent of just instead of raking leaves, you have a leaf blower and both have their pros and cons, but it does allow you to focus on perhaps other more important components to get to your goal or
Yeah.
solve a problem, you know?
Yes. Yeah. I think we're just at the start of figuring out what that balance needs to be. I know when I was working on some coursework for the fall, I was out walking and I had an idea for like a point that I wanted to make about branding
Mhm.
and things like that. So I put it in my phone and then I asked ChatGPT a questions and mine is named Scout. So I'm like, Scout, here's this thought. What about this? Is there a degree of social enterprise that's included in this? Do a little deep dive and check the following things. And so it does it, but while I'm walking, my brain keeps thinking about it, right? To your point about like you can't
Exactly.
stop thinking about it. So I started to notice that it was the same kind of relationship that I kind of have with my whiteboard, right?
Mhm.
Like I'll be doing gardening or playing with my dog or working on
Yeah.
a project or whatever. And it's like, there it is. And I
Yeah.
literally will like drop what I'm doing and run into the
Yeah.
other room and start. I have this like 4 foot by 6 foot whiteboard where it's like constantly covered with mind maps of everything.
Same. Yeah.
And I enjoyed that sort of like vomiting everything that you just thought
Yeah.
of, and then you
Mhm.
kind of like crash where you're like, "Okay, take a break, take a breath."
Yeah.
And I was walking, right? And I had that same kind of moment, and I realized that this human computer interaction that we need to figure out this balance where there's this paradox of like it's super fast and it does it for you, and yet I also find that if I use it without forcing myself to eject from that and
Exactly.
aggregate. And so I developed this that's what this Fail Forward Lab was about was I had started to think of it in terms of you go in and you have these sprints where you're like, "Brr, give me some data."
Yeah.
You absorb that, and then I'm forcing them to eject from AI
Mhm.
and to dig into what does that mean to you? What are your own morals and values and
Mhm.
experience and thought process and mindset? How does that shift all of the information that was just served up to you in seconds that you could now consider as a part of that solution? And I always tell them that if you are going in for your next prompt and you don't have to catch AI up with where you are as a human,
Mhm.
then you're in too
Yeah.
fast. You
Yeah.
need to wait for those aha moments to
Yeah.
happen in a human level. Because I think the really magical things, I was talking with my friend Christopher Lafayette on the West Coast about emerging technology, and he was explaining the same kind of thing, that he's like, what you're talking about is that you have this sphere of information that is
Yeah,
AI, but where the really cool things are going to happen is on the edges, like, and that's where things like
absolutely.
music and emotion and poetry and song and just all kinds of distinctly human things, right, that will
Yep.
be difficult for us to code and put into a database. That is maybe where we can lean into those things that we, in my opinion, really haven't valued enough in our culture
Hmm.
because we're so busy with
Yep.
the analytical tasks of reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Right.
Well, that's
Right.
where AI is the strongest, is those
Yeah.
things. That's what we test for in our SAT scores. That's how we test our IQ. That's how we
Hmm.
evaluate who's good and who's not. That's how we get hired and fired. That's who gets
Yeah.
promoted. It's all based on that. And we largely ignore the distinctly human things that are not replicable, that if you can lean into those and become what I would call cognitively ambitious, right? So I'm telling them, you need to have cognitive ambition. You have to grow and build advantage of this constellation of who you know and things you've experienced and emotions you've let yourself feel and things that you've tried that you never thought you would, and going into that scary place, whether it's real or it's in your head. That makes your brain that much more fertile, so when you get that brain dump from AI, your
Hmm.
brain's like, all right, give it to me. I need
Ready
more
to
data
go.
and more
Yeah.
stuff to play with. And then we start to become better at seeing pain points and finding solutions and being more empathetic toward each other, so
Hmm.
we can see, oh, this is a third person problem because that's not an issue for me, but I can see
Right.
that there's like, 2.5 million people have this issue every day. Maybe there's revenue there, right? So it's about
Right.
business, it's about making the world better. And it's like, if we can take that then and apply that to social enterprise, where people are saying, how could I move the needle on making my company more competitive because we have a social edge to it? That helps me outcompete against someone who could be either a copycat or something very similar to what I'm bringing to the market. But if you're telling me that you're going to bring this product to me and it will soothe this pain point, and you're going to support something that I care about at the same time, then it's like, okay, that's the job I want. So that's what we're starting to see with these students, is like, don't just look for, six figures in a C-suite and,
Yeah.
all of the stuff that goes along with that, which is awesome. But how are you doing when you go to bed at night? Like, do you feel like, wow, I changed somebody's life today on this? That
Yeah.
is priceless.
Well, that it's interesting that you hit on that, because that was what my whole talk about was the future of AI, and I said it's gone from just like efficiency AI basically um to like solving pain problems, right? Like it's about solving pain points of where you've got people in a sandwich generation, let's say, and they've got they're working full time, but then all of a sudden their parent gets sick, and the stakes are very high, the learning curve is very steep, but they don't have that runway, right? And so it's like, if you can solve those emotional issues with it, then you're really off to the races, because
Yes.
people will do so much. They'll pay more, they'll be more invested, to
Yes.
avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. I mean, I think it's wonderful to create images and to create all these these fun things that you can do with AI, but if you're really in a bind and AI can give you a lifeline, to me that's where you're like, oh my gosh, where do I sign up? I'll do it, because
Mm-hmm.
you
Yes.
need to solve your problem.
Just democratizes the ability to have an impact, because when I had my agency, everything we did as far as research and strategy and situation analysis before we started getting to the creative side, that was 4 to 6 weeks and $20,000 later, and that was
Yeah.
years ago. And now it's
Yeah.
like, you need that business intelligence.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't compete with the big sharks of the world out there because they have those resources in house, or
Yep.
they have the pocketbook to be able to pay for that research, you can't compete with that. We used to lose clients all the time that they're like, we want to do this project, but we can't afford the photography bill
Right.
alone, right?
Right.
It's like,
Right.
well,
Right.
now all of those different assets are like instantaneously available to you. Well,
Yep.
now one person from Ohio, could they now compete with a multi-billion-dollar international company?
Absolutely.
Now they can. So I'm
Yeah. And
dying to see the first like chimera level, solopreneur making billions of dollars, that they didn't have to give away the farm or sell
Yep.
their soul to the devil to get there because now they
Yep.
have this ally.
Yep. I
So,
love
yeah,
it. Well, you have been the best sport. I could talk to you forever. I mean, this is just, there's
same.
so many things to focus on. And Beth, so how can people find you? What's the best way if they want to reach out?
Probably LinkedIn is, probably the place that I'm in there most frequently that would be relevant to this. This LinkedIn, .com/in/Beth A.
Yep.
Miller. And just, yeah, because I'm constantly working on projects in the entrepreneurship space, specifically in social entrepreneurship. We're launching next year, we'll have a social entrepreneurship certificate available that's brand
Oh,
new and
great.
really innovative in that space. But
Great.
also all my work with Wagtown and dog friendliness and using that as an economic driver and working on AI projects that kind of bring some of those worlds together. So it's a pretty exciting time to have all those things come together, right?
I
So
think it's,
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
it's
always looking
amazing.
for people that are what I call possibilitarian. My friend Lorca taught me that
Oh,
word
that's a
years
great
ago.
word.
Isn't
That's
that
a great
great?
word.
Yeah.
I love it.
I
I
just
love
love
it.
that. Yeah.
I love it. Well, you have been such a pleasure and most importantly, such a good sport for turning a meeting into a podcast.
Sure, sure, no
I
problem.
I love it. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and more importantly, tell a friend, share the episode because somebody out there really needs a boost and a pick me up. And for all the entrepreneurs out there, I think this one will do it. So you can find me at The Profit Goddess or on our YouTube page, theprofitgoddess.com. And I encourage you to go and watch this episode as opposed to just listening to it on your favorite podcast channel. So, Beth, thank you again. Love to have you back. And
Thank
everybody,
you.
have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.